Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Small Business Briefing brought to you by the Small Business Association of Michigan. I'm Rob Fowler, the CEO of Sbam, and today is Thursday, June 3rd. I'm joined in this briefing by Brian Calley, President of Sbam. This briefing is brought to you by Health Screen and Healthy Visitor, a text-based tool where you can send a text out in the morning and do the health screening for employees and visitors. Keeps you compliant, it's simple, and it's painless. You can find out more at healthycomply.com. Brian, I want to start actually with a congratulations, I guess, to us, but to you in particular. Every year there is a survey done of legislators, lobbyists, policymaker staff, those who are kind of in and around the policy world, and it allows kind of a ranking of most influential organizations, most influential lobbyists in several categories. And this year, Sbam was ranked as the fourth most influential association or membership organization. And you were actually ranked as the fourth most influential advocate among those organizations. So congratulations to us, to you, and certainly it takes a lot to make that happen.
You know, just recently, I think Sbam really did demonstrate where the true effectiveness lies, and that is with active membership. We did a call to action for public comment on opposition to permanent workplace safety rules for COVID. And boy, did our members step up. We had through our portal over 1,800 comments that came through. There aren't very many organizations in the state that can create that type of volume into a process like that. And it wasn't just a matter of days later when that proposal for permanent workplace safety rules was withdrawn. So really, it's about the grassroots activism of our members willing to engage at a level that can't be denied. And people around the system here have really noticed that the way that Sbam really leverages the knowledge and the influence and the activism of small business owners in every industry you can think of in every corner of this state in order to get things done.
Well, I agree, and certainly it takes a lot of dedicated volunteers, including our board of directors and the Legislative Action Committee, but appreciate your leadership in this whole thing as well. I think you've led us very well during the pandemic. If there was ever a year, we've been in the sort of top 10 for the last decade or so of most influential organizations. I think if there was ever a year, there was an argument for us being number one. I think it was this year, and so we'll see what happens next year. Hey, let's start with what I think is a feel-good story, but more than that. This is a story about small business nimbleness and flexibility and being true to mission. Andrea, if you'd put the picture up, I think many of you will know this the story, at least the beginning of the story. On Mackinac Island last Sunday, there was a house fire. It was the Brigadoon House. For those who are familiar with the island, it's right across from the harbor, right next to the yacht club. And I think what is interesting about this picture, while it catches the devastation of the fire, look at the couple walking down the street just in front of it. That's the story that I want to kind of bring to life. This is a couple who is having their wedding reception at the yacht club right next to the building that caught on fire. Obviously, it just ruined the plans, and there they are trying to figure out what to do next. I'm so pleased that the owners of Mission Point, Mark Ware and Liz Ware, are part of our leadership council. Mark is actually going to be a new member of our board of directors. And Liz and Mark are both with us today to kind of pick up this story from this point and tell you what happened. Liz?
Oh, Liz, you're on mute still.
Sorry. Okay, so this is really a very heartwarming story. At about 6 o'clock on Sunday evening, Jake and Elizabeth Landed had just gotten married and they were at the yacht club. Elizabeth's father was giving the toast when they looked out, and right across the way, the Brigandine Cottage was on fire. One of their guests actually went over and notified the family living there that the house was on fire. They helped them evacuate. Everyone called 911. The fire department was there very, very quickly. And thank goodness for our Mackinac Island Fire Department. They're a volunteer fire department. They're so committed. And they really did an awesome job in keeping that structure from falling down and being able to be saved. Fortunately, at the same time this was happening, Brandon Sheldon, our general manager, and his wife were walking by. Brandon quickly picked up the phone, called my brother Mark, and said, "This is the situation." And Mark had the foresight to say, "Okay, everyone's going to be coming down. What can we do to help this couple?" So Mark, why don't you give us, just from your perspective, what was going on at the hotel at that time?
Sure. So it was a fairly quiet evening at the hotel. We weren't expecting a whole lot, and we didn't have a lot of staff on hand. I got the call from Brandon, and we knew that the bride and groom were staying at the hotel, and we had many guests that were going to be staying at the hotel. So we knew that they'd be coming back. And so we instantly went out to our promenade deck to see if we had anything going on. We didn't have anything there at the moment. So we worked really hard on getting tables out, chairs out. The groomsmen showed up and they were like, "Hey, we got to have a wedding. What are we going to do?" And we said, "We're on it. We're on it for you right now. Here's where you're going to go. I need some help from the groomsmen. I can't get the tables out enough because I don't have enough staff right now." Next thing I knew, I had all the groomsmen. I had fathers and uncles and a couple boys that were, I think, 12 years old that were all helping out. We got the chairs out. We got the tablecloths out. We got everything set up for them. Then we started coordinating with the other businesses on the island. So back with the yacht club, with the Chippewa Hotel, they brought over different supplies, papers, cups. The yacht club worked with the Island House Hotel so that they could make all the food and finish cooking. And then everybody started bringing things over. Our general manager, Adam Simpson, went down, or one of our managers, Adam Simpson, went down, and there was a aunt, I believe, of the bride who was going to go get the flowers by herself and walk down there. And he's like, "That's not going to work." So he grabbed two of the guys from the bell stand. They got bicycles and filled them up full of flowers to make sure everything got down on time. And we had it all set up. And by the time that the bride and groom even knew what was going on, everything was done. The bride and groom were still in the church. They had stopped in the church to just be thoughtful of what was happening. And then their brother came in and said, "Hey, we're going to have a wedding at Mission Point." And they had no idea that was going to happen. So they got there, everything was set up, and they had the night of their lives. It was a lot of fun, and we stayed to the end and made it work. And it was a combination of small businesses throughout the island who came together and said, "How can we fix this for this couple?"
Yeah, there's a picture of the happy couple at Mission Point, and I think there's another one coming up here as well. Liz, I think you're the one who said it. Your instinct as a company was to help. Why was that true?
One of our core values is to do the right thing. It might not always be easy, but it's important to do the right thing. And we also have hospitality from the heart. So when this presented itself, there was nothing that we weren't going to do to make every effort to give this couple the reception that they wanted. And the staff was amazing. We all believe in this. We all believe in doing the right thing. We all believe in hospitality from the heart. And to be able to do this and to get to see the pictures of Elizabeth and Jake dancing and smiling, that's what we're here for. And it's just, it makes us very happy and very proud that we were able to participate with the community in doing this.
You know, there was one more Sbam member who pitched in on this effort as well. And
yes, our buddy Chris.
Yeah, so Chris Shepler also made it a memorable evening.
He did. So Chris was really special in this. He knew what was going on. He knew that the reception was being delayed. So he delayed his boats leaving the island because some of the guests who were at the reception were not staying on the island and they needed to get off for the evening. And he allowed them to stay later to enjoy the time with the family and friends.
Well, it's just such a great example of what it means to be a small business. I mean, I try to imagine this sort of thing happening and dealing with a bigger company. Like, well, how are we going to work out billing? How are we going to get the contract signed? How are we going to make sure it's fully insured? And instead, you have really a group of small businesses who are, in a lot of ways, are competitors, right? And yet coming together in order to in order to do this. I mean, where else would that happen except for with small businesses? And so that's, what a difference. We say over the course of this pandemic, it's not just a luxury or a nice to have small businesses. It's the pillars of the community. It's the foundation that the rest of life kind of revolves around, and we can't do without it. What a great example. So proud of you two.
Thank you. We're proud of you, and we are so happy to be associated with Sbam. And Mark, congratulations for going on the board.
Thank you. Very excited about it and very proud of Sbam and all that they've achieved, and so appreciative of all the work you did, especially during COVID. It's been so helpful to all of us on Mackinac Island and in Northern Michigan, so we really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Mark is the CEO of Mission Point, and Liz is Vice President of Marketing. They are brother and sister. Awesome contributors to Sbam. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
So Brian, it's not Data Monday. However, data is driving us a little less than it was early on, but it still has a little bit of context for the decision making and what's going on. We have a chance to look at them a little bit earlier today. Let's take a look at some of the data.
Yeah, moving forward, we're going to do kind of just a bit of a truncated sharing of data. We don't have as much at stake at what these reports show anymore, but they'll still come in. This stuff still comes into play. It's still watched very closely by the government. The same emergency powers that they have operated on since last fall still exist. And so I think it will be important for us to take a look at it. And it's really all good news still. So we'll go through it pretty quickly here. 7-day average has now fallen below 500 cases per day. I mean, that's pretty incredible. You have to go back to last July since we had that. And here's the thing is it's still falling. So I think we're in good shape. We're about to get to a point where we see numbers as low as we've ever seen them since the beginning of the pandemic, or down, in that June, if you look over here in this little June dip where it got really, really very, very low. We're headed to those types of numbers again. Percent positive is down below 4% on the 7-day average. But it's not unusual for us to have individual days that are below 3%. And the number of tests that are being done have declined. So that, fewer tests means that it pushes the percentage up. The fact that the percentage is still coming down, declining at the same rate that it has been for weeks, that tells me again our caseload is going to go lower, and all the other metrics that go along with it. Hospitalization continues to decline, about at the level it was in the middle of winter when we were at the lower point. But we know that this is a lagging indicator. So the fact that cases are still going down tells us that this hospitalization number is going to continue to go down. So already way lower than the type of capacities that would make hospitals nervous these days. But I think it's going to get not just lower, I think it's going to get a lot lower. And then look at the way that the deaths have dropped off. Still, an average of 20 or 21 a day. That's still a significant number, but it's dropping and dropping pretty sharply. So this is the furthest lag of the indicators. And that's what tells me that this number, I think, is going to go a lot lower too. Looking at where we stand with the rest of the country, we're now 18th. So remember, we were number one for a while, now 18th. So that's good news. And if you look at the other, the state that's right by us there, Florida, I just think it's absolutely fascinating how close Florida and Michigan are and how different the approaches are that we're taking in the two different states. It'd be a case study for somebody to look at sometime into the future. So, and then looking at vaccinations, they really have leveled off. So there was a significant decline. That decline seems to have stopped. Now, these are 16 years and older. So these aren't all vaccines because 12 to 15-year-olds can get vaccines. But for the sake of uniformity to show is, among the population that has been eligible for some time, how are we doing? And I think it's pretty level. If our state can stay at that level, about 100,000 per week for the rest of the time, rest of the summer, I think that we'll start approaching that the percentages that I think could credibly be called herd immunity heading into the fall, like Israel did. I don't think we can afford to go much lower. So hopefully those numbers hold up in terms of the weekly activities. But overall, good news. I mean, really across the board, we're seeing some very, very strong trends, and the downward trends really aren't slowing down much. Usually when they start getting low, they start flattening out a little bit. The decrease starts flattening a bit. On the cases, it is a little bit, but look how low they've gotten. So that's what tells me that hospitalizations and fatalities are about to drop to levels that we really maybe haven't seen through the whole pandemic.
Well, good. And just as a reminder, we're not looking at percent of population who's eligible to be vaccinated as the trigger. The triggers are two dates, June 1st and July 1st. We're inside of the June date. Some capacity limits have been raised, but not eliminated. But July 1 is really when all those capacity limits go away, the mask mandates go away, and we can really begin to look at what comes next and what's normal. One of the issues that continues to haunt us a little bit is the issue of unemployment, and this strange position we're in where we still have a high number of people on unemployment and jobs really going wanting people, businesses with positions open. We've now seen that the work search requirement has been reinstated, but it takes a little more than just simply reinstating it. What's the latest on that?
All right, hey Rob, I'm back. My computer went dead. I don't know what's going on. It was plugged in, but somehow it wasn't drawing power, and I didn't notice. So, all right, where are we at?
Unemployment. What's going on with unemployment? The search requirement is back, but it takes a little bit more than that.
Yeah, so we've got there's a lot of things happening with unemployment, and I expect this is going to be really the center of our advocacy work over the next few months. So we see nationally, we see 24 other states have discontinued participation with the federal unemployment assistance program. So the extra $300 increase over and above what the max $362 per week that can be received under the state system. So the states that have discontinued federal participation have seen job search activity go up very substantially. Obviously, that should not be a surprise to anybody. I think there's not much chance that will just naturally happen here in our state. The governor favors extending benefits from 20 to 26 weeks, so extending them out further. The idea of giving up on the federal benefit early is not something that the governor is going to support or approve of. Although the legislature wants to leverage other issues to try and make progress in this area. Work search has been added back to it, but in terms of how a person has to register for work search is that's still kind of an open question. My understanding is that the Michigan Works agencies would like to have in-person registration return where there's real accountability, real kind of on-site work search, and who are you meeting with, and that type of follow-up and accountability. That's not the case yet. Right now, you have to register with Michigan Works, but it's an all online process, and we don't yet know how much accountability there really is. If a person said, is it as simple as, hey, I registered and I promise I'm searching for work? Is that all it is? Or is there really more accountability to the process? So these are the things that we are working on right now, and that we intend to really take a big portion, definitely based on our member feedback. This is the top issue. Now that capacity limits have either been lifted or we have a date certain when they'll be gone, this has quickly risen to the number one issue that we are hearing from members.
While we're talking about our advocacy efforts, earlier today, the governor announced what she called the Economic Jumpstart Plan. Some of it is familiar, that is to say, it's been proposed before. We know about it, but maybe packaged a little bit differently. But I think the underlying issue is it's spending some of the federal stimulus money. And by my count, about $1 billion aimed towards this program. It's a proposal. The legislature still has to vote on it. What do you make of it?
So some of it is pretty familiar, the same as what was proposed with the governor's original budget proposal earlier this year, and has a lot of early stage business support programs in it. And that all seems, I'll say fine. I mean, it's the idea that we've got a lot of startup activity according to EIN business filings. So we know that there's stepped up startup activity right now. The idea of beefing up startup services makes some sense. The part that I think will be more controversial on it is the proposal that grants be given to businesses to pay the differential between whatever wage is being paid and $15 an hour for anybody who has a sub $15 an hour position or positions in their organization. So to make up the difference for 3 months, and then the business would have to agree to maintain that after the grant runs out for at least 3 additional months. It's hard for me to imagine many businesses taking the state up on this. Again, it's just a proposal at this point. It has to be approved by the legislature. It probably won't be. But it's hard for me to imagine a business taking up the state on an offer like this, because you have to think in terms of sustainability, right? And frankly, so many businesses, including in the service industry, have pushed their starting wages up past $15 an hour anyway. And so they're still finding it's difficult to find employees. As long as the unemployment system pays $16.55 an hour as an equivalent wage, which today it does, I think employers are really gonna struggle for employees. And this program, I think it's well-intentioned, probably misses the mark.
Well, I agree. I think for those who there's plenty of incentive to raise wages to obviously to get employees. Most will figure that if they could sell their product at whatever it would cost to pay $15 or more an hour, they'd be doing it right now. What keeps that from happening is the price of product. And at some price, some products are simply not viable, or some services, you're going to pay $20 for a hamburger. And that's the great dilemma about this $15 an hour debate. So I agree. I think it's hard to see people taking that incentive. But we'll see. Like you said, it has to pass the legislature first. Let's move on to a report came out just this last week or very recently about venture capital coming into Michigan. And while it seems like maybe an unlikely thing to have happened this past year, actually Michigan did pretty well.
Yeah, so Michigan has a distinction now since 2016 of being the state that has had the fastest growth in venture capital investment of all the 50 states. And that's actually quite a turnaround from, say, a decade or 12 years ago, coming out of the Great Recession. Venture capital really fled Michigan, avoided Michigan. And since 2016, so 2016 is when we really saw an upward trend. The last couple of years, it's been over $3 billion in venture capital coming into our state, including venture capital from outside of the state. So this is a pretty big turnaround. It's a good sign. One of those things that Michigan, for even when our economy was in a relatively strong position in the past, venture capital usually did not come here, and that appears to really be turning around. So a good, well, I say be turning around. It's been turning around for 5 years. And over that time period, though, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, over those years, Michigan experienced the highest amount of growth of any state.
That's great. That is great. And people might, it's a little bit of a head scratcher that over $3 billion came in last year during this pandemic. But hey, the PPP is officially ended the end of May. As we look back on the 2 rounds of PPP, $24.5 billion came into Michigan. That's $3 billion is a big number, but $24.5 billion in PPP obviously saved a lot of businesses that would have otherwise literally have gone out of business. But it also is driving an interesting other number, which is the state's budget. That and other federal stimulus or federal dollars. Again, what do you make of that? That kind of money coming to the state of Michigan?
We're not shy about pointing out flaws and problems with state and federal governments, but I must say that the federal government's ability to stand up the Paycheck Protection Program to deal with the fallout of the closure of businesses around the country, to stand it up in the time period that they did, to work through existing financial services infrastructure to make it happen. It was bumpy. The first round was pretty dramatic, and I know people were disappointed about those early days, but they listened and they adjusted, and it ended up being, I think, one of the important success stories of the federal aid programs over the last year. On the one hand, you had state governments that at various levels were requiring businesses to be closed, and the federal government providing some payroll support, especially. So I'd like to point out, though, I think it's important that we acknowledge that the Paycheck Protection Program was mostly to help the employees of businesses. It's not like it's just a windfall or just extra money for the owners of business. It was mostly for the employees of business, and it provided a level of stability in a very unpredictable and unstable time. So those are big numbers. You're right. I mean, over $24 billion. That is an enormous amount of money, but is dwarfed by the amount of economic fallout that we, I think, otherwise would have experienced. So really, I think this is an example of where we really need to look to the federal government and say, well done, that you pulled off something pretty amazing here, and it made a big positive difference. It's not to say it was perfect, but I'd hate to think of what things would look like today, especially in a state like Michigan, where there was a very aggressive approach toward closing down businesses. I'd hate to think of what we would look like today without the Paycheck Protection Program.
Well, let's talk about one of those industries in particular. Everybody's paid a lot of attention to restaurants, and certainly the story is not yet written. But one of those was the fitness industry. New report that came out about what is likely to be the fallout of the industry. Nobody was more restricted in terms of capacity limits and really being completely shut down for longer than almost anybody else. What does this new report tell us about what's likely to happen in the fitness industry?
Well, it was a pretty heartbreaking report, frankly, that about 17% had already failed, and of people in that business, and that between now and the end of the year, that the number might be twice as high as that. And so it's tough. I mean, you're right. This is an industry that was impacted more than most industries. And is one where the landscape is very dominated by small businesses, and it just now that we're at a point where, capacity limits June 1st went up to 50%, and then of course we'll go to 100% after July. Who knows? Was it in time for them to especially the smaller players to make it out? I don't know. We'll see what happens with that industry over time, but that, with all the kind of generally good, positive forward news that we've seen, that particular report was like a punch in the gut.
Well, we'll keep our eye on that one as well. As we kind of wrap up today, let me point out a couple of meetings that I'd like to bring to your attention. The first is the Sbam annual meeting. This is our once a year membership meeting, where it's really our biggest meeting of the year. This year we're doing it virtually. Hopefully the last ever virtual Sbam annual meeting. It is June 15th and 17th. So it's a Tuesday, Thursday afternoon meeting, and you can find out more at sbam.org/annual meeting. A link was just put into the chat as well. So that's the first, June 15 and 17. You can register, and would love to see you there. The second is something you're going to hear a lot more about, a small business summit, actually put on by the state of Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. That is June 23rd, also a virtual meeting from 8:30 to 1 o'clock. Brian, you're on the sort of planning committee for that. What can people expect?
I think this could be a really interesting meeting. It's got a lot of different facets, but we will be launching next week a survey, which will be unveiled at the summit. A survey of our members, basically a kind of a state of small business type survey. We did a few of those last year. We have not done one yet this year. And it's going to measure the confidence of small business owners in different industries, whether you've experienced growth or contraction on revenues and employees, what your biggest challenges are, changes that you perceive will be longer lasting than the pandemic, but caused by the pandemic. So a lot of different aspects to it, some interesting insight. And insights, they'll have some folks from the White House to talk about some of the future plans that might be coming out of the Biden administration. So a heads up on that, and then hearing from different industry sectors, players, regions around the state. So I think it's going to be well worth people's time.
All right. That again is June 23rd, 8:30 to 1 o'clock. And again, I believe we put the link to register in the chat. So hope to see you there. Thanks for joining us today. We'll be back on Monday. This time we really will be back on Monday. We'll see you Monday at 3 o'clock.
See everybody on Monday. Remember, shop small.